Hello, I'm David Kerr, Professor of Cancer Medicine from the University of Oxford. Today I'd like to talk a little about the value of resolutions. I don't mean the common or garden resolutions that you and I might make at New Year, and that promise to be better and that promise to perhaps have a sort of more individualistically strong life, but rather the resolutions that are delivered by governments, and specifically in this occasion by the United Nations. But my pal Richard Horton, credibly distinguished editor of the Lancet, has just written an excoriating piece as an editorial describing the recent high-level United Nations meeting that was held in New York a couple of weeks ago. Many, many years ago in 2011, when I was president of ESMO, I had the honour, as part of the Chronic Disease Alliance, to represent our European cancer community at what was then the second only ever UN meeting to be held in health. More of that later on, and why that was an important point of inflection in terms of how governments deal with chronic diseases. Back to last week, the meeting in New York, the meeting had 3 resolutions, 3 statements to be made about pandemic prevention, universal health coverage, and tuberculosis. And I'm going to quote Richard now in his editorial. He said, quote directly, "One cannot help but be struck by the bland, indeed narcotic nature of the language agreed by ministerial negotiating teams. These declarations say nothing new. They offer no fresh commitments. They recycle ancient promises. Even worse, they're riven with clichés and lies." Now, the Lancet, when it was founded, well over 100 years ago, was founded as a campaigning newspaper. And Richard, as editor, has undoubtedly maintained that momentum even in the modern world. And he's right. If one looks at the language that came from the declarations, they're vanilla to the point of uselessness. Compare and contrast that, though, with the political declaration that was made on control of non-communicable diseases. This work was driven by the then Deputy Director General of WHO, Professor Ala Alvin, another friend of mine. Ala, a distinguished public health doctor, former Minister for Education in Iraq, and former Minister for Health in Iraq, and somebody who has served the global community remarkably well. I think genuinely a great man, a great thinker. Ala had worked for years building a consensus around chronic diseases, and this is when the vast majority of the UN WHO was focused entirely on communicable diseases, AIDS, TB, and malaria, reasonably so. But we know that the burden of chronic diseases, cancer and diabetes, cardiovascular disease, respiratory disease, represents a huge burden to those wealthy nations, but to those emergent nations also. And what the contrast between the work that Ala did then to pull that declaration together and with the more recent one could not be more stark. There's no doubt that Ala's sense of the hard work that he put in, the hard miles, gave a sense that we as a global community had to address non-communicable disease. And it was part of a global package on health for all. The way that Ala did it was to bring together the private sector and academics, societies, professional societies, public health professionals, ministries, and he worked to build this coalition that, as I said earlier, had an unstoppable momentum, and I think has resulted in huge global improvements in how we think about cancer control, how we interlink the risk factors that cross all the boundaries of diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, my own field, and so on, and to come up with a set of a roadmap as to how we can reduce incidence and mortality of these diseases. So have a look at Richard's editorial. He does write very well, and he is vituperative in his dismissal of the recent high-level UN meeting. Well, what a pity. But again, contrasting that with quite the opposite, Ala Alwyn's work, which has been of huge global import and impact. Thanks for listening. Let me know what you think about. Let me know what you think about what Richard has written. Is it fair? Is it being too hard? Let me know. But for the time being, Medscapers, over and out, and thank you.